in particular energy transition, we will need a big amount of budget, and Indonesia is now really facing tight fiscal limitation due to some government program priorities that needs a lot of uh, budget. So, such as the nutritious meal program, for instance, and also Indonesia is now really struggling to create employment for, especially for the young generation. Uh, we have the potentials for the economy from the so-called demographic dividends. We will have like 180 million productive uh, workers until 2040. But at the same time, of course, it is the challenge for the government to create and facilitate the employment creation. Also, at the same time, Indonesia is now facing the so-called the indication of premature deindustrialization. Indonesia is now really relying on extractive industries for export, for instance, more than 60% from coal, from palm oil, and also from nickel. And uh, we there is the indication that Indonesia's manufacturer in the industrial sector now is having a problem. And of course, if we are talking about employment, we need healthy manufacturing industries. So, so a lot of economic challenges, and uh, in many extent, there is a trade-off between economic agenda and climate agenda. So, so our challenge now in Indonesia is how we can really connect the Indonesia's climate agenda for decarbonization, for climate mitigation, with our academic agenda to create employment, to push industrialization. The second one, it is also apparent that China is one of the global leaders in green transition globally. In particular, if we are speaking about the renewable energy, especially solar energy, and also uh, electric vehicles. And at the same time, China has been one of the most important financiers and investors for Indonesia and South Asia in general. And also, China is now, if we are talking about its investment in Indonesia, is shifting from fossil fuels, especially coal in the past, to renewable energy. So I think these two things uh, is really the important context for Indonesia's climate action, and also and how we can connect it to Indonesia's economic development, that frankly speaking, economic agenda, I think not only Indonesia but also in Southeast Asia, and I think also in Asia, will be the priority agenda. So how to connect, basically how to connect the climate agenda to Indonesia's economic agenda. Next slide, please. So this is the current situation. If we are talking about the first year of President Prabowo's administration, there are a lot of ambition. The president conveyed, I think it's more personally rather than formal policies. The president conveyed about the 100% renewable energy in Indonesia by 2035, and recently the president also mentioned about his ambition to have 100 gigawatt solar energy as additional capacity. And also, if we are talking about formal policy, we this year we also just have the so-called electricity business plan that is much more ambitious than the previous business plan. It is the 10-year business plan. Actually, we plan to have 17 gigawatt additional capacity of solar energy until 2034. And maybe for China it's a small amount, but for Indonesia it's ambitious. And we can see here with the ambition in the electricity business plan in the next 10 years, Indonesia needs to build its renewable energy in the next 5 years until to 2029 uh, with the speed of 4.5 times of the current speed. And from 2030 to 2034, Indonesia need to accelerate its speed to develop renewable energy 11 times compared to the current speed. So it's challenging, and as I mentioned, there is also a trade-off with the government economic agenda. For instance, if we are talking about fiscal, uh, Indonesia, of course, will prioritize its budget spend, state budget spending for uh, really um, um, populist program, and also the government priorities such as the nutritious meals program rather than energy transition. So so a lot of ambition and also a lot of challenges. Next slide, please. However, at the same time, and of course, uh, to meet the Indonesia's energy transition ambition, formally and also informally asserted by President Prabowo, Indonesia needs big amount of financing, and apparently Indonesia will need foreign investment, and we can see that China now is one of the global leader in green transition, and also China has been one of the most important uh, investing countries in Southeast Asia and also in Indonesia. And if we are talking about green finance as well, China is one of the most important financier and investor in Indonesia. We can see here from 2013 from to 2023, China has been playing a significant role for clean energy financing in Southeast Asia, and in within Southeast Asia, Indonesia is uh, has been receiving the largest amount of investment in clean energy from China. Next, please. And yeah, and also if we are talking about China's investment in Indonesia, especially in the energy sector, as one of not one of, but the most important sector for Indonesia's climate mitigation. China uh, ha has been shifting as well. So if previously the most of the China's energy investment is focused on coal, uh, we can see that in 2024, 56% of China energy investment shifted to renewables energy already. So we in sustain analyze historical uh, investment data from China for energy sector in Indonesia. And in 2024, China invested around 900 million USD uh, for energy sector in Indonesia. And we use the historical data, and using this historical data in 10 years, without the additional amount of investment, Indonesia can have 9 billion investment in energy sector from China. And if we can really optimize it, we can have equal to 80 Cirata solar floating solar power plant. That is the largest solar energy plant in Southeast Asia. So if we can shift all the China investment in energy sector in Indonesia into solar energy. This is a simple simulation from Sustain. We can create 112,000 jobs. We can at the same time reduce 17 million tons CO2, and also it will power 4 million households. And the total of uh, China investment in energy sector in Indonesia in the next 10 years is able to build equal to 80 Cirata solar power plant. So it's big, and it's really impactful. And we don't take account the possibility of additional investment from China in this scenario. Next, please. And we also have simulation if the China investment uh, focus in certain provinces such as West Java. We put West Java here as a study case because West Java is the largest populated province in Indonesia, and also West Java has the largest number of PLN, the state utility company customers, reaching 17 million customers, and that accounts almost 19% of total customers, electricity customers in Indonesia. And also, based on the electricity business plan, it is estimated that the electricity demand in West Java will grow by 43% in the next 10 years. So it's big. And if we really focus the solar energy development in West Java as part of green transition, using the China investment in Indonesia, it will only need like 30% of the BRI investment in the next 10 years, and it can create 33,000 local jobs, and also at the same time reduce the carbon emissions significantly. Next. And another case study, and also in West Java, is in the EV manufacturing industry. We know that EV market in Indonesia is now really growing. It's too premature, of course, for us to have like a final judgment on the future of EV in Indonesia, but it's really growing now. Anecdotally, we can see EVs, electric cars, every day in Greater Jakarta, and also electric motorcycles. So it's really growing now because there are a lot of incentives for producers and also for consumers. And uh, now the localization of EV manufacturing industry from China is happening. For instance, now BYD is finalizing the development of the manufacturing plant in Subang, and we also use the simple simulation here. If in West Java, for instance, we can have like four manufacturing plants with the size of the BYD manufacturing plant. It can create 70,000 formal jobs that has much higher income than informal jobs in the province, and also can contribute to create employment for around 4% of the current West Java's unemployment rate, quite high for a single industry. And we know that the informality in the Indonesia's uh, employment is now really a challenge, because the formal sector, and we know that manufacturing industry is the most important contribution to the formal sector, now is facing challenge to to survive uh, and to grow. So it will the development of green manufacturing industry through the localization in the EV will really contribute to Indonesia's economy. Next. Yeah, this is my last two slides. The first one is there are still barriers actually to realize the potential. So we have the potential from China's green momentum for Indonesia's economic development, but there's still some barriers. The first one, of course, the fossil legacy of China's financing in the fossil fuels, especially in coal. And in 2024, China still, in the energy sector, China still have 44% of energy financing for fossil projects. And the second one, of course, I think uh, there is a big barrier for the localization of China's investment in Indonesia to really to make the investment really beneficial for Indonesia to create employment to uh, deepen industrialization in Indonesia. For now, it's imported, and then we are thinking to have like made in Indonesia and probably next designed by Indonesia. Next. So there are basically some recommendations from our analysis for the Indonesian government. Of course, we need more incentives and broadly speaking regulations to provide clear and stable rules for green investment. We learn from the electric vehicles experience that incentives really work to boost green transition, and it will also work for other sectors, and also to apply just transition as the core of the the industrial development, green industrial development, and also prioritize localization. I think this is challenging, but we need to do that, and also invest in green skills to optimize the potential from the Indonesia's demographic dividend, and also to leverage China's investment to build Indonesia as the regional hub. Especially, I think in this case is for electric vehicles and battery manufacturing. And for the Chinese government, of course, uh, there is a need for green finance expansion, and also how uh, to localize China's green investments in Indonesia, because localizing is really a key. And the last one is learning from the massive development of green industries in China. It is also important to have like best practices sharing between China and Indonesia, and it is also important and potential to have like sharing between uh, provinces in China and provinces in Indonesia as part of provincial partnerships. I will stop here, Kak Lani, and yeah, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kang Tata, for those insightful points about current situation on Indonesia, right? On China's green momentum, and told us about challenges and also opportunity, especially intersection between energy transition and also economic opportunity. And now we move forward. We are pleased to welcome Shuang Liu from the World Resources Institute, who will share insight and lessons from China's energy transition. You have 15 minutes from now.
Thanks, Lenny. Can we put up the slides, please? Or should I do this from my end? I think I can share it. Oh, there you are. Thanks. Hey, everyone. Great to have this opportunity to join the webinar today. At the World Resources Institute, my work is really focusing on how we can leverage the South-South cooperation to support the low carbon and resilient transition. and development in the global south and developing countries. As we do recognize, there is a finite knowledge and technology gap that can be met if we leverage the international players, including those from China and the global south well. So the report we're talking about today has articulated very well, and Tata has also shared on why that we could leverage China's renewable energy progress. And we're looking at job opportunities, historical trend on Indonesia being one of the large destination countries for Chinese investment in the past couple of years. And I'd like to focus on how that we can better leverage Chinese players' role to support the Indonesia's energy transition. And next slide, please. If I can take maybe one step back to look at not just Indonesia, but also the Southeast Asia region in the solar PV development in the past couple of years. One observation is that the Chinese investors are quite market-driven when they're looking at the investment opportunities abroad. On the slide, the chart on the left, we're looking at a big increase in the solar PV exported from this region in Southeast Asia to the US market. And a quite significant portion of the solar PV exported from this region was funded and all involved by some large Chinese solar PV manufacturers. And then, to be very honest, in the past, part of the reason that the Chinese manufacturers started moving their manufacturing capacity to Southeast Asia is to diversify their manufacturing facilities and also to ensure better access to the EU and US market. However, the data also shows that the majority, if not all of the solar PV manufacturers in this region in the past have been exported to EU or US market. And then that's what I frame as more of an export-oriented strategy as how we observe what we have observed in the past. But with increased pressure on the trade policies and practices, we do not expect from a larger increase of the solar PV and the other products from Southeast Asia to EU and US market. In the meanwhile, on the right of the slide, we're looking at more ambitious targets on renewable energy in ASEAN member states, which could be the next driver behind the continuous increase in the clean tech deployment, not just the manufacturing capacity in this region. And this could be a very welcomed strategy when the Chinese investors are seeing promising opportunities in local deployment. And also when they're looking at more incentives that's behind this ambitious target on renewable energy in this region, the Chinese investors are very likely and incentivized to ride on this opportunity and then keep moving their manufacturing capacity and base to where the market will be. And that's what I will argue as how that we can shift from the export-oriented to local development strategy on renewable energy and the other clean tech industries. And next slide, please. If I can also borrow Tata's earlier framing that the transition is not just about energy, it's also about economic and development opportunities, including those in the communities and in rural areas. For instance, we're looking at the recent announced ambitious target of having 100 gigawatt of solar PV installed in Indonesia, which includes 80 gigawatt to be installed in villages. That could be another opportunity to engage the Chinese players. On the domestic market in China, the recent increase in solar PV market was largely driven by distributed utilization of solar PV. And we're talking about distributed utilization in commercial and industry buildings, as well as those in villages and also rural areas. this know-how of how that China was able to achieve this large increase in distributed solar PV can be what China can contribute to Indonesia's solar PV target and efforts to achieve it. And I argue that more importantly, it's also how that we can take advantage of cheaper and reliable technology provided by Chinese manufacturers. On the right, we're looking at the rooftops in Pakistan that's covered by solar PV, solar panels. Some of us are looking into the very recent, and I think it's continuing, solar rash in Pakistan. And the scale of the solar PV we're looking at that's installed in Pakistan in the past 2 to 3 years is dozens of gigawatt of solar that's achieved. When the communities in Pakistan are taking distributed solar PV as a much better alternative than on-grid electricity, and also when the tariff policy in Pakistan has moved to the direction in favor of importing cheaper solar PV from China, the Chinese investors take on the opportunities. And then those mechanics of how that the Chinese investors could support the community in taking on the solar PV could be something that we can look at how to be replicated for the efforts to achieve Indonesia's solar PV target. And please note that I'm not saying that we shouldn't be working on increasing the local manufacturing capacities in Indonesia. But sometimes, if we're looking at also the data point of it normally takes between 2 to 3 years to establish a new solar PV production line from scratch. And so sometimes there might be a trade-off. We're looking at the speed and how soon we can deploy and install solar PV in Indonesia versus do we really have to wait until that there will be wholly local manufactured solar PV before we can take out the installation. I'd love to see how we can evaluate those opportunities to ensure that we can achieve the energy transition, the local community development, and the other agendas that are all on our list. The other community-based approach that I want to highlight, it's also Tata and the report was introducing the electric vehicle sector. I think the other point we're looking at the EV sector, it's also the two-wheelers and three-wheelers that the Chinese market has demonstrated a big potential and success can also be something that to be examined and to see how we can replicate some of those practices in Indonesia. I haven't noticed any cases in Indonesia yet, but in Africa, when we're looking at the retrofitting two and three-wheelers in larger African cities, the success has been that the Chinese particles of the electric vehicles are imported and assembled as a local production lines in Africa to support the retrofitting or replacement of more dirty and diesel-fueled two and three-wheelers. So we're looking at not just to achieve the climate agenda, but also the local pollution mitigation agenda by working with the Chinese two and three-wheeler manufacturers. So that's something I think will make sense for us to see how we can adopt or borrow some of the models on the EV sector in Indonesia. And the other good example I'd like to share is Tata mentioned about the job opportunities and also training and skill set. Again, in Africa, we're looking at the Chinese investors, and those are the private ones who are engaged in the vocational training, all the skill set training schools in Africa, and how they are the ones who are designing the curriculum of the training process, and they are the one who provided the equipment for the youth generation who are attending those vocational schools to build up their skill set. And also more importantly, because of the Chinese companies who are looking at bringing local labor, the vocational school can provide certificate that will be recognized by the Chinese corporates when they are looking at hiring local people. So looking at different perspectives of how that those vocational schools have succeeded in Africa in bringing local job opportunities is another angle I think that could be beneficial when looking at the China and Indonesia collaboration. And next slide, please. This will be the last slide I'd like to share on how that we can replicate the good practices for those financial models. I just want to quickly share there are very different financial models when we're looking at the different collaboration and different nature of those projects between the Indonesian and Chinese investors. We don't have to look into the details of those financial models, but for the collaboration between PLN and the state grid on the smart metering, as well as the waste to energy project that we're looking at in Palabang that's supported by Zhengneng, a corporate in China, is that the investors themselves are adopting to what will be the best financial model they could leverage in investing in those different sectors and different projects. And then for us to better understand how that those financial models were enabled, how we can replicate these practices, it's another key in know-how. And I also want to quickly highlight is if we're looking at both of these examples, the lead lender of the syndicated loan, which is a group of the lending financial institutions are providing loans, is they're not led by the Chinese ones. In both of the cases, DBS, which is a Singapore-based bank, are the lead arranger. So another point I think we could look into is we don't have to look at the collaboration between Indonesian and Chinese investors exclusively. Many of the financial models are very much of a trilateral collaboration with the investors from Indonesia, China, and then third country. Sometimes, in this case, we're looking at Singapore. In some other cases, we're also looking at the China-EU jointly investing in global south countries, or China and multilateral development banks collaborate on certain countries. So if we could unpack how that we can take advantage of those experiences and then expand them in Indonesia, that can really speed up the collaboration that we want to see in Indonesia as well. And I'll pause here. Thanks, Lenny.
Oh, sorry for the mute mic. Thank you, Shurang, for highlighting those key aspects. And next, we'll hear from Mas Yere, who will talk about what other countries in the region can learn from Indonesia-China's collaboration. Mas Yere, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and I guess good evening for those in Washington, D.C. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this report. And I think this report explores very important questions about how can Indonesia benefit from the global shift toward green energy. And the scale of investment needed is enormous. The report mentions around $10 billion annually just for the electricity sector. And I think that kind of capital has to come from somewhere. So the report focuses on one potential source, which is the Chinese financing through initiative like the Belt and Road. And I guess there's a logic to this. China has been ramping up renewable energy investment globally, and Indonesia is well positioned as a recipient. So the question isn't really whether such partnership makes sense. The question is how do we structure the partnership so Indonesians can actually benefit? And I hope other countries, especially Southeast Asian countries, could also learn from examples from Indonesia, China partnership. The next slide, please. So after reading this report, I have three questions I'd like to explore with you today. The first is about job creations. The second is about what we mean by local, because this one of the policy recommendations mentioned in this report is about localizations of the project. And the third is about how we turn good ideas into actual implementations. So let me walk you through each one. The next slide, please. Uh, Let me say upfront, I do not question that investment create employment. It does. That connection is real between investment and job creations. What I'm interested more is in getting a more complete picture of what that employment looks like. The report does acknowledge that construction employment is temporary and that operational jobs are fewer, but let me get it straight that the renewable energy is still is a capital intensive sector. Once a solar plant is operational, it needs far fewer people. Operations and maintenance might require maybe less people. Solar technology is designed to run with minimal staffing. That's part of its efficiency. And then I think the report discuss the cases about Cirata solar plant. Yeah. So if we are talking about creating another 80 Cirata projects, then I think the potential number if of employment is somehow below the number stated in the report. And I think we need to be very careful not to overestimate the potential employment, the potential job creations provided by renewable energy sector compared to, for example, manufacturing and agriculture. Uh, Manufacturing and agriculture creates more jobs per dollar invested, and I think that's just the nature of different industry, right? So when we apply an economy-wide average to capital-intensive sector, we might end up with estimates that are higher than what actually happens on the ground. These numbers doesn't these numbers do not tell us about distributions. When no, still on the same slide. When we say jobs, we are bundling together quite different things. Direct employment versus indirect. Permanent versus temporary. Positions requiring advanced technical training versus entry-level work. In my research on similar projects, in Morowali, for example, I found that this distinction matter enormously for understanding who actually benefits. High technology installations needs specialized capabilities. Solar panel installations, electrical system integrations, technical maintenance. This requires training that's typically available in the urban centers, technical schools, and engineering programs. What I've observed is that permanent skill positions often go to people from cities who relocate for work. And how about communities near project sites? They participate in the project, but often through different channels. Local communities provide housing, selling food and supplies, logistic, offering services to the workers who have moved in. That's economic activity, and income does flows into those areas, but it's different kind of participations than direct employment in the facility itself. So I'm suggesting that a more detailed breakdown will be helpful to understand the complete picture of how Indonesia can benefit, can leverage from China green development momentum. So it is important to understand this full picture so that we can make informed decisions and design informed decisions to support the policy, to support the Indonesians government policies. Next slides, please. My second observations is about yeah, I observed that the report uses the word local quite frequently, local jobs, local benefits, localizations, but I keep wondering at what scale, because local can mean different things, and these differences matters. Does it mean Indonesians as opposed to foreign investment? Or does it mean from the province where the project is located? For example, say the BYD manufacturing hub in West Java, or China funded nickel processing facilities in Central Sulawesi? Or does it mean like from the specific district, like Subang, Purwakarta, Morowali, Halmahera, Central Halmahera? Or does it mean like the from communities immediately adjacent to the project, the villages where people can see factories from their home? These kind of distinctions have real implications. From a national employment perspective, for example, and from a provincial perspective, jobs, the green projects can create jobs for those who register as, for example, people from West Java. But how about the number of jobs created for people from the local community, from the specific locality where the project is located? High-tech manufacturing requires specific capabilities, and most rural areas do not have large pool of people with battery engineering training, for example, or advanced manufacturing skill. So naturally, companies recruit from where those skills exist. Workers who relocate do contribute to local economy. They pay rent, they buy groceries, they use local services, and that creates economic activity. But it's different from local capacity building. It's different from communities developing their own technical expertise. And I think with benefit from more precisions in, defining uh, the terminology of local. When we say local, we should specify which level we mean, because the benefits looks different depending on which definitions we are using. Next slide, please. So my third point is about moving from goals to actions. The report recommends that we should prioritize localization strategies. And I think that's wonderful. That's very reasonable. Localizations make sense as a policy directions. The questions is more about how should we operationalize this localization strategy? How do we actually do this in practice? The report defines localizations conceptually. It talks about building local capacity, employing local workers, strengthening supply chains. These are good goals. And when I look for concrete examples how this work, and there's, for example, in Chirata, it's also a very good example. And what details do we get from Chirata is, for example, we hire local teams and safety training programs. But I find myself wanting to know more. Who were these workers? Where did they come from? What happened after the project was complete? What percentage of workforce of the workforce came from nearby community? So without this kind of specific data, it is hard to know to what extent the localization has been successful. This matter because of pattern we see in development project. Well-intentioned interventions that do not specify clearly implementations mechanism often end up benefiting people who are already have advantages. People with educations, people with urban backgrounds, people with connections, while those who are already marginalized remain at the margins. This is not anyone's intention. It is just happened. We do not think carefully about how policies translated into practice. And from my previous research in Morowali, I can tell you that local people doesn't really get the significant benefit. In Morowali, there are more than 100,000 Indonesian workers. But how about the percentage of the local villages, the workers from the local villages? Yeah, because in Morowali, the nickel processing center, it attracts a lot of workers from nearby districts, from neighboring province, and from the adjacent cities, and even from the nearby island. But when we are talking about the numbers of locals from the village where the project is located, how about the percentage of those locals in the workforce structure in Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park, for example? So when we are talk about localizations, we need to really scrutinize, yeah, at what level of localizations we are going to target. In Indonesia, we often see a challenge, policies that look good at national level, but face these difficulties in transitions to provincial, district, and especially village and community level. This is where implementations either succeeds or struggle. What I'm suggesting is that alongside top-down policy design, we might benefit from more community-oriented approaches that ask how do we design projects so that communities hosting them, the people who live right next to the factory, right next to the project site, whose land is being used, who experience the daily impact, how do we ensure they gain meaningful benefits? This means thinking about participatory mechanism, not just consultations, which often happens after decisions are already made, but genuine participations in shaping how projects affect communities. What would that look like institutionally? How do we create space for community voice in project design? Without thinking through this mechanism, we risk a problematic outcome. Project that promise broad benefits, but in practice mostly benefits those already in advantageous positions, while communities at margins experience disruptions without proportional gain. So my suggestion is, as we think about leveraging green investment for our own development, let's think also from both directions. Top down, what national policies enable localizations, but also bottom up, what community-oriented mechanisms ensure that benefit reach people who need it the most. That dual perspective, the national framework plus community participations, that's what I think would make these recommendations more actionable and more likely to achieve the inclusive development outcomes we all want. The opportunities the report identifies are real, and the potential green investment to advance Indonesian development is genuine. I'm simply suggesting that realizing that potential requires more attention to how we bridge national policy and community level implementations. Next slide, please. So let me conclude. This report tackles a very important subject, how Indonesia might benefit from major shift in global green investment. And for me, the potential is real. The potential funding from China is real, considering China's very dynamic situations about green industrializations in China, especially in the renewable energy sector. But I think we need more detailed thinking about how should we implement our partnership. We need to be more specific about the local benefit that we design, that we seek to achieve in our partnership, and we need to present a more complete calculations of what kinds of economic participations different groups are likely to experience. So the opportunities from China are worth pursuing, but pursuing them well requires asking these questions up front, not after the projects are already underway. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for all the speakers, such a great mix of the insight. Now we would love to open the floor for the question, and we just received questions from Q&A box. And let's start with a few that have come up with in the chat. Well, let me check first. Okay, I get it. The first question is the existing green energy cooperation between Indonesia and China mainly about manufacturing and EV battery? And how about solar and wind power plant? Because these are important to reach 100% of renewable target. I think we will first uh, hand over to Kang Tata to answer the question, and after that, other panelists can also respond the questions.
Thank you, Kak, and thank you for the question. So yeah, I think it is now quite relevant for us also if we are talking about China's investment in Indonesia, that we also see the potentials of renewable energy development in Indonesia, that is significantly there are more opportunities than before, including for solar and wind. And we can see that this year from the 10-year electricity business plan, there are a lot of opportunities uh, for example, for solar energy development. We are planning to build 17 gigawatt solar energy development in the next 10 years. And from a discussion with policymakers, the implementers, it's quite challenging. So, so this is challenging, but also opportunities for China's investment in Indonesia at the same time. And also, building on Suang's presentation, I think I agree that there are a lot of opportunities from the 100 gigawatt ambitions from the President Prabowo's administration, and it is said that 80% plan to be built in at the village level across Indonesia, and uh, and it makes actually the renewable energy development, in this case, solar energy development, is much more viable, I guess, because anecdotally we can check that it will require, for instance, if we want to have like a 1 to 1.5 megawatt for each village, we will need like 1 hectare to 1.5 hectare for each village. And if we have experience live in the village, in the countryside, it's quite doable. So there are opportunities from the recent development, and the challenge now, I think, aside from financing, I agree with Mas Ray, for us to make the green transition, and the energy transition is the example, is really beneficial, equally beneficial, optimize the inclusivity for Indonesian citizens. And there is a challenge, and I agree, the devil is in the details. And I think we also need, yeah, it's responding to Masyarakat as well. We need to really have clear principles in terms of, for instance, if we are talking about Chinese investment in Indonesia, in terms of the human rights, and also ecological justice and economic justice. And at the same time, I think practically how we can balance, Suang mentioned it before, between the speed and also the economic benefit from Indonesia's side, and also its distribution. I think it's always attention. We will, frankly, we will have, we will always have tension between the speed, the scale, with the aspect of economic equality, economic justice, and the most important things for us, I think, we have principles. We don't have, from Indonesia's point of view, we don't have rising to the bottom. We have principles, and at the same time, we understand and we manage, the tension between speed, scale, with the issue of equality, participation. And also one more thing, I think, that the aspect that is important in China's investment in Indonesia to leverage Indonesia's economic development is we don't mention in the report is the aspect of governance. So it is also important. It's like it's all. I think it's always there so far, and I think we still face the problem of governance in Indonesia's policy making and in Indonesia's economic development. This is also one thing that we need to take into account when I think we need to manage it if we are talking about how we can optimize the benefit of China's green transition to Indonesia's economic development. I think that's from me, Kak.
Okay, next I will hand over to Xiong Liu to answer and respond to the question from the previous question. Can you respond, please?
Yeah, I actually don't have that much to add on top of what
Mhm.
Tara has elaborated. And I was a little bit worried because my presentation is largely focusing on solar PV instead of the EV and battery. I hope that can demonstrate some of the potentials in the renewable energy sectors.
Okay, next maybe Mas Yere want to respond.
I think I have nothing to add. Mas Tata already mentioned a very complete answers for that, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I will move forward to the next question. The question is from Bayu from the media Pikiran Rakyat. The question is, you said West Java is a potential region for the green economic investment. What is your main reason for this? Why isn't it being implemented in other regions? What are the challenges facing green economic investment in West Java, and how to improve another province to develop this green economic? I think the question is will going to Kang Tata.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Bayu. This is actually one example of opportunities of China's green investment for the subnational and can be the local economic development. And we pick West Java because as one of as a case study because the existing infrastructure, of course, a lot of industrial development has been carried out there, and yeah, and including for EVs and also if we are talking about human resources and also um, we also mentioned in the report about if we are talking about renewable energy development and its supply chains, West Java has the largest demand for electricity among provinces in Indonesia. So there are some factors, and of course, it still uh, uh, for West Java itself, it still requires a lot of improvements from various aspects. So and the what I think we in Sustain agree that the the green transition, its economic benefit should really take into account the decentralization from the national level to subnational to provinces, but also Master already mentioned, but also how we can optimize the benefit also from provinces to districts, even to the village and community level. That's I think the reason we take a provincial case study here, and I believe we believe that there are also opportunities in other provinces, in other locals as well. Yeah. So So yeah, that's I think my response, Kak.
Okay, thank you, Kang Tata, for response the questions from the audience. And was we actually got some questions today, but unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we have to wrap up here. But the questions that we are received today will be replied by email. So keep an eye on your inbox and feel free to react out of your like to follow up on anything. And I think we can all agree that today's discussion provided many important insights into how Indonesia can learn from China's green development momentum, right? And yeah, before we end the session, I invite all the panelists to take a picture with me. Okay. Okay, is everyone is ready to take a picture? Okay, I will count down the numbers. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, once again, please click your best smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for all for joining us today and to all our brilliant speakers for sharing your insight. We will be following up with an email after the session, which will include the recording of today's webinar with transcript of the discussion and the PDF version of the report and some few key quotes and some additional background information to support your reporting. On behalf of Cerah and Sustain Indonesia, I would like to thank you everyone for joining us today. Let's continue collaborating towards sustainable and inclusive economic transition. Have a wonderful day ahead and see you at our next event.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Terima kasih.
everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mas Yere. Thank you, Kang
Sama-sama, Mas.
Tata.
Ya.
Ya.
Sehat-sehat ya, Mas Yere.